Bore da, good morning, and welcome to the first instalment of the Construction Wales Innovation Centre's Offsite Ready webinar series. Offsite Ready is a collaborative project led by Construction Scotland Innovation Centre in partnership with Edinburgh and Napier University, Moby, Class of Your Own and CWIC, all made possible by CITB funding. It's great to have so many of you online with us this morning. My name's Gareth Evans and I'm the Centre Manager for the Construction Wales Innovation Centre. I'd like to more importantly introduce my fellow presenters this morning. We have Mila Duncheva and Jasper Mead. Mila is a lecturer at Edinburgh and Napier University's Centre for Timber Engineering and, more importantly than that, the lead author of our excellent Offsite Ready resources. You'll see a little bit more about these later on. Jasper is the founder and director of PYC Construction who is located in Welshpool. Jasper and his team strongly believe in precision, and this emanates from the quality and performance of buildings they produce. On to the content of today's webinar. Our presenters will be exploring the first of the Offsite Ready resources, namely the Offsite Fundamentals. We'll also hear a little bit more detail from Jasper and PYC Construction around their experience of working in offsite construction. But firstly, and before we delve into detail, I'd like to explain how you can interact with us. On the right-hand side of your screen, you should have a control panel. You'll be automatically muted throughout the webinar, but should you want to ask us a question at any time, feel free to use the question tab on your control panel. These questions will then be forwarded to the presenters for consideration and for us to be able to relay to the relevant person. We will have 2 question and answer slots within our agenda. These are towards the end of the session, and should you feel that you want to interact at any time throughout it, please feel free to do so. Now, into the agenda. First up, I have a quick poll. I'd like you to take part in, if that's okay. The poll should appear on your screen and will allow you to submit an answer. The first question is a little bit about your background. In which area do you educate or train in? Further education, higher education, industry? Are you an industry representative? Please feel free to vote now. We can see we have some results in there, and the results, we have a 30%, actually 37% of our beneficiaries and of our attendees this morning from higher education, 16% from FE, and this is refreshing to see a large majority as well from industry. So welcome everybody, and hope you enjoy this morning's webinar. What I'd like to do now is move into the next slot. You've heard about from me, and especially around sort of the background of the project. I'd like to now introduce Mila, who will be exploring the Offsite Ready Fundamental Package, which is available on the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre website and offsiteready.co.uk. Mila, over to you.
For that, everyone, good morning. I have the pleasure of talking you through the Offsite Fundamentals learning materials. So what you should be able to see right now is the Offsite Ready webpage, which is quite simple, www.offsiteready.com. So what you can see here is a brief summary of the project, which you can explore in your own time. And if you go to training materials, You can then see an overview of all of our available modules, starting from Offsite Fundamentals through following the life cycle of the project. So if you click here on Offsite Fundamentals, or you can navigate directly through this drop down as well, you get a really nice overview of the module. Now, Offsite Fundamentals is designed as the module that builds a strong foundation for the remaining learning materials. So this is a really good module to, if you're a, I saw we've got lots of training providers. If you're an educator, it's a really good first module to introduce into your existing curriculum as a step-by-step approach to adding more and more offsite construction in your educating process. I'll just scroll through here quickly so you can see the variety of learning materials, and then I'll show you a few of them. So we've got the key topics which we're covering, including key terminology, materials and products and manufacturing process, and equally important, meta skills. There's different terminology for this. You may know these as essential skills or soft skills as well. Some people call them business skills also, but these are all about communication, problem solving, adaptability, etc. And then if you scroll down, you see the variety of learning resources, both in terms of technical knowledge, meta skills, and a lovely Meet the Author video by Carola Galgagno, who was instrumental in putting all these learning materials together. So what I'll do is, first of all, if I just click on this module descriptor in a new tab, I see a very easy to navigate PDF, and you can download it directly, and I'll just zoom in so you can see better. So this is our module descriptor. Now, I know that as an educator, if you want to introduce something new in your curriculum, you usually need to go through a module descriptor update process. So to make that easy for you, what you can do is you can use some of these headings, such as appreciation of how buildings are constructed, as learning outcomes, which you can both update in your module descriptors, and you can communicate to your learners so that they can know what to expect from that session or from that module. And then the description allows you to understand what the content of that learning outcome will be. As you can see, we've got 8 here in the first module, varying from different systems through how to apply lean, the different processes, impact on site if manufacturing is a fault, the benefits and the challenges equally, and of course the soft skills or the meta skills, such as accuracy, business case for offsite. And these are all based on a report by CITB, which analyzed gaps in the existing curriculum. So they're all items which really need to be embedded in education to enable offsite construction. So I'm just going to go away from this and go back to the main module. What you've got also here, the next item I want to show you is the PowerPoint slide deck. Now, if I click on download slide deck, what you find is that I get a PowerPoint, which is an editable file. I'll just pause this because I don't need to download it. But you can open it and edit it as you need. For example, if you've got learners with difficulties, you can adapt the background color, or you can rearrange the slides, etc. So as you can see, it starts with some introduction and glossary. I won't go into too much detail, but I just want to say huge thanks to CCG OSM, as well as Lang Rook and all the other industry partners who provided excellent images so we can really explain what offsite construction is all about. As you can see, it's all about the manufacturing flow, very clear flow, as well as materials stacked at each stage, and of course different levels of automation. So if I scroll through here, you see there's some nice quotes from the House of Lords stating that there is real confusion in terminology such as terms of modular, offsite, and others all being used interchangeably. And that's why we introduced the main concepts of modern methods of construction, which is all about increasing efficiency with the different terminologies, as well as offsite construction, which is all about moving a process from the site to a factory, and then the interconnectivity between those two. And the rest of the PowerPoint slides, you notice, follow directly the module descriptor that we had a look at. 1.1, appreciation of how buildings are constructed, 1.1, and then talking through panelized, volumetric, sub-assemblies, hybrids, etc. So I think that's most of it on the PowerPoint slides, and I do also want to show you, sorry if I can move this slightly, the booklets. Now, the technical booklet will give you more guidance in terms of what to say when you're presenting the slides, and can be a very useful handout for your learners. Again, it follows the same structure. So if we follow the same example of appreciation of how buildings are constructed, you can see you have more information, such as more extended definitions of each of the systems. Volumetric, this is all about the three-dimensional components, sometimes called pods or modules, with very high completion in the factory. So everything from the cladding up to the light bulbs can be included in the factory. Panelized systems with the different typologies, open or closed, a lot of variety there. And these are essentially planar panels of wall or floor segments, sub-assemblies and components which you'll be familiar with, such as precast staircases or I-joists, which you can use directly on site, or indeed hybrids, which combine a few of these elements. Now, so you can explore this further, and what you've also got is a gold color to identify sustainability tips, and you've also got some nice infographics and exercises which you can use with your learners in tutorials or for yourself to test your knowledge if you're in industry. Now, another resource very fantastically created by Carola Gogagno is an infographic summary of something which is quite interesting, such as the history of offsite construction. You know, it's not anything new. It's been around since at least the Middle Ages, and it's evolved for quite interesting case studies, such as Liverpool J. Brodie, who pioneered the precast panels, and going to more current examples, such as Murray Grove, in London, in Hackney. So you can explore all these in your own time. We've got some nice videos, which we'll get to in a minute. And very similarly, we've got editable PowerPoint slide decks for the soft skills or the meta skills. And what I want to show you is that these also come with a lot of notes for the facilitator. So let's say on this exercise, the slide only shows an image of shoes, and then there's instructions for you as the facilitator. Okay, what do? You do a timed exercise in which students try to sell the shoes to the class. Is an initial exercise for that tutorial or workshop. And these are great to embed within your program or a CPD within your company if you're in industry. So I mentioned the videos. I'll just go quickly to one of them. If I click play, I can play it directly in the window. I've removed the sound. And then if I go to YouTube, I can also click on the Offsite Ready profile, where if I go to playlists, I see all the different playlists of our videos, including the module summaries. And then I can very easily play them one by one, starting from offsite fundamentals, digital design, estimating, commercial, etc. Now, if you're interested in these videos, if you like them, but you want something a bit more structured learning, we've also got an Udemy course. Udemy is a free-to-use platform for learning and training. So if you look for Offsite Ready there, you'll find the Offsite Ready, Offsite and Modular Construction module. And all that is a combination of all the videos, such as I can play the Offsite Fundamentals video. I can then go to the available resources, such as the infographic. And afterwards, I can take a quiz consisting of 3 questions. So if I, for example, get an answer wrong, I can check my answer and there'll be feedback for each of your answers. and at the end you get a certificate of completion, a type of CPD accreditation. So I know that's been a very quick overview. I'll stop there, and thank you very much, everyone. I hope that's been useful.
Thank you very much, Mila. It's great to see the detail within the resources, and you know, from our side, you know, as an educator, best of all, they're all fully downloadable and available on the website. Sort of, you know, this would make it sort of really exceptionally easy for educators to embed this, you know, within their teaching materials. One point from a quick side that we'd like to add to that. Coming up within the next couple of months, in addition to the resource on the website, CWIC are working with Construction Scotland Innovation Centre to upgrade our current immersive learning resources that will be made available to include off-site construction. So for educators, there'll be an opportunity here to download a virtual reality model that could be used with their students to demonstrate the various types of construction and the ability to explore the models virtually. So it essentially brings a little bit more excitement to the classroom than maybe traditional methods. So no, thank you very much.
That's great. Could I just note, Gareth, sorry, I forgot. I just want to emphasize that creating all these learning materials has been a real team collaborative effort. So we had people from across the whole country. And especially, I think we've got Juan Faris Papi as part of the audience. So thank you very much, Juan, who provided lots of precast concrete case studies, which you can now see in the digital design module. But as well as Juan, we've got at least 13 more people who have contributed. So just to thank everyone involved. Thanks, Gareth. That was all.
Yeah, no, it's been a, you know, as we say, it's been a real team effort. So you know, it's exceptionally so good to see how you know, with the geographical challenges that we've been placed over the last sort of you know, the challenges around COVID-19, how this has managed to develop and how these are becoming a lot more the feedback into, especially around the embedding of these into the resources within education. Now, I know in Scotland these resources have been available for 3-4 weeks, and it's, you know, great to hear how sort of, you know, City of Glasgow College and other FE and HE providers in Scotland are already using these. So it's brilliant to see that. Next, moving on with the agenda, we've got another poll for you, and I hope you don't mind if you undertake this second poll. The purpose of these polls, they link to polls that have previously been delivered by Construction Scotland Innovation Centre for us to gather some information. And the next poll, it should appear on your screen now, and it outlines which aspect of offsite construction do you believe needs further awareness: digital design, estimating and commercial, logistics, offsite manufacture, or on-site placement and assembly. Please feel free to vote, and the answers will be displayed. We should have a countdown timer on this, shouldn't we?
3, 2, 1, lift off.
If we could have the results now, that'd be brilliant, even if they are interim. Okay, that's very interesting in terms of in sort of which aspect of offsite construction do you believe that needs further awareness. 56% of our audience indicated on-site placement and assembly, followed by digital design, and picked up. Great, brilliant. Okay, well, it's offsite manufacture with there. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Jasper Mead. Jasper's company, PYC Construction, based in Welshpool, delivers exceptional timber frame buildings with a high performance fabric first approach. And rather than tell you about this myself, I think it's timely to welcome Jasper to the stage. Jasper, welcome.
Hello. I thought it would probably be easier for me to introduce myself with a series of slides, and I'd like to give you a background of where we've come from, our history, and how we've set up in construction. So I started the business with my brother about, well, actually 27 years ago, and our focus was on renovation and conversion of barns, working with oak frame, particularly oak frame buildings. We soon moved from that to timber frame, a softwood timber frame, and our keen focus was to use sustainable materials and concentrate on how to produce really efficient buildings, so low energy construction and cheap to run buildings. The setup of our companies, we've got warm cell on the PYC insulation side, where we distribute this insulation. It's recycled newspaper insulation to the industry. Construction, where we work mostly locally on some turnkey sites, but others just delivering timber frame panels. And then systems of delivery of our sustainable products, which we distribute to other construction companies. And XLOC is the delivery for machinery to deliver the warm cell. So about 4 years ago, we bought a site in Welshpool. Our operations were based in our yard at home, and we ran out of space quite quickly there. So we were buying in timber frames, and we wanted to focus on a new branch of manufacturing, which was using I-beam construction. So we built a small unit, and we've got limited capacity there, but it's a 500 square meter factory where we can build I-beam timber frames. And the first building we built was offices adjacent to there, which we built to the Passive House standards using the I-beam system. And here, as you can see, we focus on demonstrating the use of timber. I work very closely with Wood Knowledge Wales, and so our keen focus is to push forward timber frame construction in Wales. Very much traditional style of construction, which is where we like to see timber frames sit in Wales. The development of timber frame helped us bring forwards our system. So balloon frames, single stud, soon became quite tricky to get the insulation values right. So twin frame was used, and still is very much so, a twin frame wall system. But we've then started on I-beams, which was fully engineered and closed panel systems, where we would fully fill them with the cellulose fiber insulation and build the panels up in the factory. So taking plans and working closely with architects at early stages, we would develop the project through. A lot of the projects we would try and encourage to be run through PHPP, the Passive House Planning Package, so we could actually really model how that building was going to perform. And of course, engineers producing our panel drawings and then working through to the panels in the factory, where we would be forming the closed panels, fully insulating them, super airtight and very efficient in that respect. And then delivery on site, optimizing the panel sizing to make that work for transport and craneage on site. Quality control, very important part, of course, and we not only do we monitor all the aspects of engineering, how they go together, etc., health and safety, we can also monitor the embodied carbon in our projects. So using the PHPP, we would run through a pH ribbon which attaches to that software, and using EPDs from all the materials, we can work out exactly what the embodied carbon is, so we can then work on zero carbon projects. Just give you a little bit of history of the projects we've worked through. So we've been very heavily involved in Passive House, and although we've got limited capacity, we tend to work on one-off houses, projects up to 6 houses. We collaborate with architects and work on some very large schemes throughout the UK. Worked on lots of schools, university buildings, mostly with Passive House, and we've started recently working on housing schemes, large housing schemes, where we haven't got the capacity to build them, so we work closely with the main contractors or with the main contractors, architects, timber framers, and clients such as councils and housing associations. Timber frame is widely used in South Wales on some really large sites, and some excellent performance coming out of some of these. Just show this one just to show you that timber frame can actually reach any type of style. That was once the largest timber frame building in Wales. more modern, more recent projects consist of these one-offs, but we've collaborated on some large schemes such as this for the Norwich Council, which was actually won the Sterling Prize for Architecture, Passive House and the council project, absolutely fantastic. Here we worked for the collaborated and worked as consultants for the timber framer and the main contractor. So that's me. I'll talk some more in a bit.
Great, thank you, Jasper. It's a really refreshing to see, a high quality product, attention to detail being sort of demonstrated throughout, really. And for us, what we're going to do now, we're going to be moving into our first question and answer session. So at first, we've actually got a question that's come in from an audience member. This is probably I'll open the floor, but it may be aimed towards more the educational side, so maybe more towards us, Mila. But the question is, there's a lot of good information here, but there is nothing in the 3 documents about design for climate change, operational energy, embodied carbon, building performance evaluation, or post-occupancy evaluation. What do we think?
That's a really good point. So I'll just answer that quickly because I know Jasper, you already hinted towards your approach towards energy efficiency, but I just want to mention that in the learning materials, I think under Offsite Manufacture, we do have a very nice video from Dr. John Stinson, who's all about post-occupancy evaluation, all about design for climate change, and he talks through how offsite construction interfaces with that, as well as has written lots of materials which you see in the booklets highlighted in gold to note that that's about the interface between offsite and sustainability. So have a look at John's video and be on the lookout for more learning materials from me. And I think Jasper can talk much more about how that's implemented in practice.
Yeah, so on our projects and a lot of projects that we work with, the Passive House scheme is used, and Passive House certification might be used, or not necessarily Passive House certification, but using the Passive House planning package, which is the design software. And then, as I was saying earlier, the attachment of a pH ribbon, where you can model what you can calculate the carbon content of your building and the emissions, etc., so that you can work out clearly what the embodied carbon is going to be. Post-occupancy monitoring is sadly lacking in a lot of our projects, and mostly due to finance. It's easier to raise the money to build the thing, but to run post-occupancy monitoring afterwards and having the right sort of building is quite tricky. And we've done it in our building to a certain degree, but certainly not as much as we would like to in our offices. We've monitored the temperatures, humidity, and haven't really gone beyond that, which is a shame. I mean, obviously you can monitor energy consumption, but it's extremely important to be able to do that, and so we can foresee what the future is going to be. I'd like to explain a little bit about my system, how it works. Perhaps would you like to do that, Gareth?
I think it's probably best if it's going to be after the next poll, Jasper. We'll pick that up okay. Afterwards. I've actually there's another question come in, so very timely, brilliant. The next question: do you think that experienced tradespeople installing DFMA units incorrectly cause issues or reducing the expected benefits? So it's actually linked similar to something I was going to ask in terms of from your industry's perspective, Jasper. You pride yourself on delivering high quality buildings. Training in that area is potentially lacking at the moment. So how do you essentially ensure that the quality product that you deliver is sustained through training processes?
We have an in-house training scheme where we train all our carpenters are either come trained or we run apprenticeship schemes with them. Clearly, we have to train specifically for our processes and offsite manufacturing, because currently we haven't got anything there available yet. That is what we're looking at working with industry to develop, is offsite manufacturing training, and we see that that's clearly going to be a really important part for developing housing in the UK. We're expecting to be able to deliver that probably start next year, offsite training for in our setup in Welshpool.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Is that similar? And so in Scotland, from a we sort of, from a Welsh perspective, currently, it's refreshing to see that within education there's a huge drive at the moment for Welsh education to embrace innovation and modern methods of construction. So further education is developing itself to a position where a lot of these techniques are now included within the syllabuses, but in Scotland, have you a model in Scotland that demonstrates offsite, or trains towards that offsite manufacturer sort of sector specifically, or is it something that's a lot wider and sort of very much traditional skills and then bespoke in-house training programs then?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I think how it happens at the moment is most likely the second option that you refer to, which is the fantastic the traditional training with lots of practical experience, and then in-house training for the specific system for manufacturers. Of course, that then creates an issue in that, okay, if somebody is trained, let's say, in company A's manufacturing system, what kind of employment flexibility does that provide for them? Can they go then to another manufacturer, or are they stuck almost in that company? So I think with that in mind, I worked with the Structural Timber Association and the Construction Industry Training Board, and together we created a series of workbooks on offsite manufacture for timber frame, as well as a timber frame design. And those have 3 booklets. I think one of them is practical skills, another one is about core knowledge, and then the final one is about health and safety. So 3 booklets between the 2 modules, so that's 6 in total. And the intention, I believe, is to use those within colleges to set up apprenticeships directly targeted at timber frame manufacturing, but not limited to one specific company.
Great. It's nice to see how across the UK, we're sort of developing a unified approach. In many cases we've been very regionalised for a long time, but with the collaboration happening, and Offsite Ready is an example of this. Brilliant. So what we're going to do next is, and we've got a third poll for you, audience, if you don't mind. That third poll will be loaded onto your screen imminently. And the question should appear. So which category of offsite construction are you currently most familiar with? Panelized systems, volumetric systems, sub-assemblies and components, or hybrid systems? And the 53% answer coming out of that is that most of us are very aware of panelized systems, sub-assemblies and components following on 27%, and 20% tailing up the rear with volumetric systems. I think, from my perspective, that's what I was expecting to come out of that answer, to be fair. And I'm pretty sure that's what came out in Scotland as well, Mila, wasn't it?
I think that's actually quite reflective of the industry. When we did an analysis for Scottish Government, Scottish Enterprise, of the capacity of the offsite manufacturing sector in Scotland, we found it was predominantly panelised timber, panelised solutions, with a small proportion of volumetric solutions as well. And I think if people say they not familiar with hybrid, you probably actually are. That's where almost intuitively in a specific project you find, okay, I want this type of floor system. Let's say I want a panelized I-joist wall system, but then I may want another system for the walls, and you create your hybrids almost intuitively.
Yeah, oh, it's great. Well, thank you very much. That brings our first question and answer session to an end. We're going to delve a little bit more into more detail with Jasper around the system in the near, just within the next couple of minutes. We will be, I'm noticing that there's a flurry of questions coming in. Once we get to the end of the sort of the information end of the interview, we will then be opening up the floor for questions. So we've merged the two sections into one for that delivery. So it's probably now that we sort of timely that we delve into further detail with Jasper around his experience of offsite construction, the various systems he's used, Jasper, would it be possible for you to show us a little bit more of your own construction system, if that was okay? Sort of, outlining the high performance system that you deliver as part of your project.
Sure. Yeah, I thought I'd play the little video, which was made a couple of years ago now, but it demonstrates how our system works, and I can explain a bit on how that has evolved, which from this. So essentially, it's a closed panel, fully insulated system, running with a surface zone on the inside and a weather protection membrane on the outside. And the development, as we're looking at it, is to try and increase more layers to be added into the factory work, so that it can obviously speed up the process on site. So performance is key, air tightness and insulation. So the fabric, very much a very strong fabric first approach. But as you see, very quick, rapid setup. So this is using panelized system, of course. Here it's just showing a little panel which again explains from the roof, but for instance this is where it's evolved with us, that we make much larger panels for roof structures. And it's interesting to see on the poll that there was nobody who was familiar with hybrid systems. So for instance here, it's showing with a panelized system using the softwood panels, but we also work with CLT, and so the combination of CLT and panels can work extremely well. And so we've used, we have worked with volumetric CLT, but where it works as a hybrid can be that you, for instance, want your first floor to be CLT because you've got perhaps an overhang, and so that can help cut out any steel structure that might be needed. So you can use your CLT floor as a shear on that, in that way. So hopefully that explained that a bit and maybe bring up some questions.
There's a question that's come in there now, Jasper, that's really timely actually, and something we were discussing sort of previously was, how from your experience, how are M&E systems coordinated within off-site systems? How do you ensure that they're not compromised on-site, fire, air tightness, etc.? Have you experience of coordinating an M&E installation within any of your projects? Absolutely.
So perhaps the largest aspect of that would be MVHR systems, ducting. So if it's a 2-story building or 3-story, etc., there might be pipework, rigid pipework that needs to go into floor cassettes, and mostly we use posi joists, but that can be I-beams as well. And so it's obviously really important to get that ducting in during construction. So that's how we coordinate with that. We would put pre-fit ventilation duct in, soil pipe duct in, etc., in the floor cassettes. In the main, for electrical work and plumbing work, that can be fitted in the floor cassettes at any time afterwards because there's more flexibility in that. But we virtually always incorporate a service duct, service zone around the external walls, and that has developed. Certainly we do it in volumetric. We would fit the electrics off-site, but where we see the future going for our panelized system would be to fit ducting within that service zone, so that you could almost have a click and connect with your plumbing and electrics throughout those panels. Other than that, then we advise using internal panels for any more serious ducting, perhaps.
Yeah, I think the ducting system will work exceptionally well. When you look at a click and collect. So used to that at the moment, being locked down, and click and connect system. Yeah. Potentially there, in the future, should you need to modify the building, or should you need any sort of retrofitting, in future years, that could potentially, cause problems. Whereas, with ducting, the ability to run services very, very quickly and easily, is sort of in place. So, rather than it's fit to forget, you have an ability to then, modify the building further down the line, should that requirement sort of come about.
Yeah, I mean, we used service zones in the main. It started off really to protect the air tightness layer, the vapor control and air tightness layer, and because penetrations in and out through the air tightness layer would obviously cause problems. But since incorporating that into our buildings, we found that First Fix M&E is so much easier when you do have a service zone. It speeds it up dramatically. It was interesting to see one of the questions that came in. Well, fire is an issue, of course, and that can be incorporated in layers, protection layers, as board protection layers. But the main question that somebody brought up was longevity and recyclability of materials used, and it's really important, I believe, to incorporate that. But the longevity of timber frame offsite manufacturing there shouldn't be a concern on how that is there. There is fantastic longevity within timber frame. We're currently working on enabling our system to be have a 60-year lifetime warranty on it. And just to put it into context on why I really believe it's possible, when we were doing a lot of renovation work, we did a conversion on a tin chapel, which was a timber frame building built in 1860. And when we took it apart to increase the insulation, the whole internal lining was existing, still there. The majority of the stud work was absolutely sound. Only places where there was bits of rot was where ground levels had been left to rise above, or there was damage around windows. Absolutely solid structure from 1860 onwards. So there's no reason to be concerned about our current systems.
Yeah, and I think that that has been the big perception of timber frame, and going back to the perception of which actually links to the to the question which you sort of answered, in terms of the historical negative perception of the prefab area, and seeing much of that in place, and yeah, it is that. Also, the volume build. The volume build is essentially. I think there's a lot of it comes down to quality. So installation quality and processes. And as long as you have those quality processes systems in place, as you just outlined, these buildings can outlast us, very, very easily. In terms of circular economy, just picking up, but there's a second point to that question. So we looked at perception, but also there's an outline there around circular economy. And Mila, have you got a little bit sort of more that you could add to that?
No, yeah, of course. Yeah, so the circular economy is something that's really, really interests me, and I think that that question, the two parts of that question, are actually quite interconnected. So in the past, whereas prefab was seen very much, as a quick, fast solution, and being from Bulgaria myself, I've experienced that. I've lived in. I've just picked up a book that I'm quite interested in, learning from the past. you know, having grown up in places that were built like that, I know just how paper thin the walls were, etc. But I think that with offsite construction, especially now at the moment, it's all about emphasizing that high technology aspect. You know, there's something that clicks in your mind as soon as you see a nailing bridge going boom, 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 and then the panel is perfectly nailed, etc. But what I also think is quite important is we touched upon, you know, Jasper's really created the energy efficiency aspects, and that then links to the circular economy in terms of how do you actually maximize our available resources. You know, that's something that's not limited to construction, but across all of our gadgets, etc. And I think that mass timber systems, we've actually got a really nice slide a really nice slide that talks about how mass timber systems can be incorporated into the circular economy, but I also encourage people to have a look at the teaching support system, the Student Design Challenge, because with in mind that this is a very important issue at the moment, we've set a group of 12 to 15 students, don't remember the exact number, but from City of Glasgow College and Edinburgh Napier University. I'm getting a share screen. I can maybe show that to people very quickly. But if you go to the teaching support system and then the Student Design Challenge, you can see the brief, as well as lots of mentor videos, and we'll populate this with more vlogs from the students showing about, this is Zarek Crivelli, for example, and Callum Nicholson. So these great students now working on a solution with West Lothian Council and CWIC to provide a deconstructible skills hub for the local area in Linlithgow. So keep an eye on that if you're interested to see what the students come up with.
Great, brilliant, thank you, Mila. We've actually had another question come in, and I think this is probably going to be better aimed at Jasper, in terms of the values that can be attained from using sort of, you know, the warm cell in your timber frame.
Well, our focus is obviously fabric first, and just to get full understanding what fabric first is about, it's ensuring that the wrap around your building, the duvet layer, is as efficient as possible. If you concentrate on saving that energy, then you've got less of an emphasis needed on generating electricity. So, you know, there's no point in having a poor fabric, but hoping that solar panels, etc., will sort out your energy efficiency. If you get your fabric first right, then your efficiency is at the top end. So for instance, with Passive House, you can reduce energy consumption of a building to 90% lower than a conventional building regs building. So it's a massive change. And U values to get to that point would be down to 0.13, 0.11, depending on what was required within that structure. But fabric first is not just about energy efficient, it's about the materials that you use, so the sustainability of the materials, off-gassing of potential materials. So, you know, we incorporate boards which have no added formaldehyde, so you've got no risk of bad air quality internally. So that again is an important part of it all.
You also mentioned you do a lot of work with organisations such as Wood Knowledge Wales. Do you, in terms of homegrown timber, do you use you know, much Welsh-based or native timber then within your construction processes? And if you do, where are those used?
We do. The core part of our structure is European manufactured. The I-beams come in from Europe, but that's the lowest part of the timber element to the building. So internal stud work and battening, etc., can be Welsh timber, and certainly cladding would almost always be Welsh timber. So that highly engineered component, the I-beam, it is possible to manufacture them in the UK, but the actual manufacturing process in Sweden, in our instance, is through, it's like a sausage production, so it's a continuous flow through, and then they get chopped aside. So it's incredible efficiency and very little waste at all. And there are manufacturers who can do it in the UK, but they tend to import the components, so and then have to build to certain size, cut them to certain size. So it's we see that it's optimizing what's available from the UK and what we have to import.
Yeah, is that very much the same in Scotland, Mila?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, and we've worked quite a lot with Scottish Forestry, and especially my colleague, Dr. Andrew Livingston, who some of the outputs you can see in the learning materials. We've developed an analysis of a generic 3-bed semi-detached house, and we're now working with organisations such as Offside Solutions Scotland and especially Maca Construction, who have a very good knowledge about how to use local Scottish timber resources in their manufacturing. So what we're doing now is an analysis. Okay, where does that Scottish timber sit best? As well as my colleague Wojtek Plowas, who is leading a project with the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre and the Mass Timber Alliance. So they're working quite extensively on how can we make mass timber products. So we're talking about cross-laminated timber, dow-laminated timber, nail-laminated timber, all these different varieties. Can we make that with C16 grade Scottish timber? Can we even use the C16 plus, which was developed by some of our colleagues at Edinburgh Napier University? And where do we need that C24 imported timber, just so we can maximize our local resource? But yeah, that's definitely something we're doing quite a lot of work on. And I know it's probably not connected directly to what we're talking about, but I had the pleasure during my PhD studies, Jasper welcomed me to PYC construction, which was fantastic. Thank you very much. And I learned a lot there. I guess I'm wondering if we could address something that I've heard quite a lot of people mention. There's almost this tension between the traditional skills and off-site manufacturing skills, with some people saying that leads to de-skilling. But according to me, it's mostly upskilling. So Jasper, I'm wondering if you could, share your thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, this is a bit of a sort of bugbear with myself, that a lot of companies are thinking that off-site manufacturing, central government seem to think that off-site manufacturing will be able to be done with people just pressing buttons and de-skilling the workforce. We see it's far from that. It's a very, very skilled operation. You can build a rubbish building on site, you can build a rubbish building off site. You have to have the skill levels there. And if you've got sophisticated equipment in your manufacturing process, then you've got to understand how that works. And of course, it's got to be repaired as well every now and again, maintained. So there are high levels of skill operations required in offsite manufacturing, and the training therefore for that process is really important. And we see that it should become a key part to carpenters' skills.
I think one of, from an educator's perspective, one of the key points that we need to do is we need to expose students and educators to opportunities to actually visit locations that they can see, feel, smell, the opportunity, and to have the experience of going into a facility, seeing that essentially it isn't much different to operating on site, and in many cases, and I see this a lot in construction across the board, it's the fear of the unknown. It's the robots, the robotic area. The age is going to come to take away our skills, take away our jobs, and it's about embracing that there's an opportunity here to deliver something different. It's the same product, it's the same essentially process that we would undertake, just in a dry, safer environment, where we haven't got challenges such as the weather, and and we can control health and safety risks a lot tighter. We can control quality of materials because there's less transportation. So from our perspective, I think from an educator, it's that exposure that's really important now moving forward. And should COVID-19 would never have sort of reared its head, this project would have made that possible. And I strongly believe that that is still going to materialise when we get to the position that we can do that. So, within Wales, speaking within Wales here now, this project will give an opportunity for lecturers to potentially visit sites, when it's safe to do so.
Could I just butt in on that, Gareth?
Go ahead.
Just really reiterating what you just said about the perception of what offsite manufacturing is. So we had a transition from on-site to off-site, and our carpenters felt, I don't want to go and work in a factory. You know, they saw factory as a production line system where they would just like do repetitive tasks. Of course, there are repetitive tasks to do in construction, but as you say, it's in the factory, but with better conditions. So the skill levels are still there, and their whole processes are just carried out in a better environment, better health and safety, better quality control, etc. One more little add about the Welsh timber, if you don't mind, working with Wood Knowledge Wales. We've developed a lot of systems and encouraging systems such as twin frame lath and truss systems, which can fully utilise Welsh timber throughout the whole construction.
Great. Yeah, and I think collaboration, with Wood Knowledge Wales, organisation that we could sort of all learn a lot from, and especially, from in education, sort of how a lot of that can be embedded to within the processes there. So to bring in this webinar, an hour has flown nearly. We've got a couple of extra things to complete. The last poll. So we've delivered 3 of our 4, and this is the 4th. So I'm going to ask if the final poll can be put up on the screen. You should see it on your screens now. In offsite construction, there are 5 drivers. Which do you think is the most important? Sustainability, culture, regulatory, productivity, digitization. So if you could answer those questions for us, and we can then relay this information back to the bodies that fund future projects. Great. So sustainability, one of the key drivers really for this in offsite construction. There's a lot. It's very, we've got a draw there where culture and productivity 19% and 6% then, looking in terms of digitization. Excellent, brilliant.
Good to see that.
Unfortunately, it's now time to draw the first of the Offsite Ready webinars to a close. Today we've had a great insight into the excellent resources from Mila, and Jasper has demonstrated us in detail how the systems work and how companies achieve high levels of performance and high standards in industry by utilising offsite construction. Thank you both to Mila and Jasper for taking your time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. Thank you both. Finally, can I thank all the audience for their participation, for your questions, and welcome you back to our second instalment, which is going to be hosted next Wednesday the 15th of July at 10:30 AM. We'll be exploring digital design and estimating, and how these play a crucial part within the offsite construction process. We look forward to seeing you then. But in the meantime, feel free to explore any of the Offsite Ready resources. These resources are available at www.offsiteready.co.uk, and there are links available to these via the Construction Wales Innovation Centre website and the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre website. Thank you very much once again. Stay safe. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr. Bye. Hi guys.
Are we safe to talk?